Hello. I'm doing a test. A test to see if I really do have an ASMR voice. For years, I've been told that when I talk to people, I have the tendency to lull them to sleep. Not because of the subject matter or anything like that. They've always told me that my voice can be quite soothing. So, I figured why not give it a try. Unfortunately, I thought I could be out here in my car in the middle of nowhere and not have to deal with any passing vehicles. But there is one now. I don't really have anything planned to talk about in this little ASMR test. I've been wanting to do an ASMR channel for a while because without ASMR, I wouldn't have been able to sleep at all these last few years. It's been a very comforting and relaxing thing that I've had in my life, and I go through so many different ASMR artists that it's crazy. I have a general pool that I listen to, and I have a tendency of going back to certain ones, and I'm subscribed to quite a few, but yeah. So I finally broke down last week, I think, and made my channel, and then I recorded a couple of episodes that I just didn't like, and just trying to come up with something to talk about. Let's see. One of the things I'm hating about all this rainy weather, other than the fact that every place seems to be getting flooded. Speaking of rain, it sounded like I just had some rain hit the roof of my car. But generally, I like to get out around this time of the year. Oh, there was lightning. Generally, I like to get out around this time of year and at night and take pictures of the stars. I have a Canon Rebel T3i, and I like to set it up and take wide-angle shots of the sky. Sometimes I'll incorporate my 4.5-inch Newtonian, not Newtonian, my reflector telescope, and try to get pictures of Saturn or Jupiter. And I've not been able to get a good picture of Jupiter. I've not quite been able to figure out what settings I need to turn the camera to so that the whole image isn't blown out. But I've gotten a few very amateurish but decent pictures of Saturn, and that's nice. However, I am very much in love with the way that Jupiter looks through a telescope. At least my telescope. Because 4.5 inches is a very small space for the mirror, and if I really want to get detail, I would have to have, 8 inches to 12 inches, some people say. But I've been able to see a lot of really good stuff come out of people who have smaller telescopes than me, so mostly interplanetary stuff. But one of the things I'm really interested in doing is getting a picture of the Orion Nebula. When I first started off taking pictures of the night sky before I had my telescope, I was taking pictures of the Orion constellation, and I had set my exposure to such a setting that it allowed the light to from the nebula to show up in this picture. And it's so crazy because I wasn't trying to take a picture of anything. In fact, at the time, I had no idea that an Orion Nebula existed. Or maybe I did. Yes, I did, because I was thinking I would have to stack the pictures. But I just learned that about the Orion Nebula. I didn't think I would be able to get a picture of it. I didn't think much about it. And when the preview showed up on the screen from that picture, and I saw that burst of red, I got excited. I changed the lens and I zoomed in, and I started taking all these pictures, and they were awful, but I was so excited about them. And I still get excited about taking pictures of the Orion Nebula. It doesn't change, but what I know changes. And my goal is one day get a picture that looks like something from a magazine. I know I can't do anything with it, but it's just the goal of it. Astrophotography and looking at the stars is one of the other things I find that relaxes me. Seeing that it's such an engaging thing to do. Often I can clear my mind when I'm out underneath the stars. Ooh, there's some thunder, maybe a plane. So, yeah, it's nice. It's expensive. I do not own the proper equipment, but I figured over time I'll get the proper equipment to get better pictures. One of the things I definitely need better equipment for taking a picture of is the Andromeda Galaxy. There are 3 things in the night sky that aren't, I'll put it this way, there are 3 non-interplanetary objects in the night sky. Huh? Oh, okay. Something happened with my phone for a moment, and I was very confused. There are 3 non-planetary objects in the night sky that I really want to get good pictures of. And One is Orion, the other is the Pleiades. I don't even know if I still pronounce that wrong or not. And the other is the Andromeda Galaxy. And I am extremely fascinated by the Andromeda Galaxy. Years ago, I used to go night fishing. And when I would go to the lake, I would sit there, and sometimes I would just, instead of actively fishing, just cast my line out there and see if anything would try to nibble on the bait. I caught a lot of fish that way, but one of the relaxing things about it was looking at the sky. And for years I would look up and I would see this fuzzy little patch of the sky. And I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't bother trying to figure it out. I would just try to get my eyes to focus on it. And I thought it was a sign that my eyes were going bad. But now I know that that fuzzy dot in the sky was actually the Andromeda Galaxy. And I've gotten a couple of pictures of it, but none looking as amazing as some of the amateurs I've seen on Reddit or I'm trying to remember that forum. Cloudy Skies. But what helps them is their ability to be able to take very long exposures. Some of them have 1.5 minute exposures stacked on top of other 1.5 minute exposures to pull out all of the details. However, with me, any of the setups that I have, I can only do at the most 30 seconds. And even then, they don't look that great. It all comes down to needing a tracking mount or barn door mount. Ooh, did you hear that thunder? As I'm not a very handy person, it's very difficult for me to make a barn door mount. As I'm a very cheap person, it's very difficult for me to find a tracking mount that fits within my price range. But one day I will. I'll do one of the two. But that's one of the problems with all this rain is my telescope sits and collects dust because the skies stay cloudy. Not that I'm complaining about the sound of thunder or the sound of rain. I live in a trailer, so I get that nice rain on a tin roof sound. Granted that it's slightly muffled thanks to the insulation, but it's still nice to hear it beating onto the roof. Now, one thing that fascinates me about the Andromeda Galaxy is the possibility of life being there. numbers would dictate that there are at least one form of intelligent life that would live there. You know? So, when I look at it through the telescope, or I squint at it in the night sky if it's dark enough, I think about the fact that if there was, in that exact moment in time of the universe, a life form intelligent enough to contemplate not only its own existence, but the existence of other beings in its universe, looking back and seeing the Milky Way, and if it did see the Milky Way, it's so far away it's just getting light from our galaxy at the time that man first showed up on Earth. So I wonder if there's already life on Andromeda, somewhere within Andromeda, and what we see is the precursor galaxy of intelligent life, or has intelligent life already been there? Has it already died off? And the light that we're seeing from Earth right now is just merely a ghost. Because that's one of the things I like to think about, is the fact that you go far enough away from Earth, things will look different looking back on Earth. You know, go far enough out into space and point back at Earth with your telescope, and you might be seeing a time, the light from when Abraham Lincoln was alive in your futuristic spaceship. And it's crazy. It makes me ask all these questions about relativity and if warp drive would actually be a sane and viable option for traveling. And then I often just wind up feeling very tiny and very small. And that feeling tiny and small is super relaxing. Because in those moments, none of my problems, financial problems, health problems, lack of friends, it all goes away. Because there's the possibility of so much life out there dealing with so much of the same problems as anyone else, if not worse problems. I read an article a few months back that stated that if there is life beyond Earth, that the chances of a space battle occurring at this very moment is very real. Well, they might not be fighting with lasers maybe they are. But think about it. A real-life Star Wars could be happening right now, somewhere in this vast, ginormous universe that we live in. And we are nothing more than ants on the edge of our anthill. Just barely looking out, barely gathering supplies to take back to the Queen. Barely sure of what else is out there beyond the mound. I mean, just a couple of days ago, New Horizons made it to Pluto. And I think it's funny that from the time that when New Horizons was launched, Pluto was still classified as a planet. And when it reached Pluto, it had been declassified. And I like to point out when I talk to people that I do not think that Pluto is no longer a planet. We do not call dwarf stars, not stars. They're still stars. Granted that stars, no matter what size they are incredibly massive. But it's just being called a dwarf planet. So technically it's still a planet. And I hope one day that they'll go back to, leave the classification of a dwarf planet. It's fine. But I hope that they go back to claiming that dwarf planets are still considered planets, because when that happens, our solar system is going to get much more crowded. There are 5, I think, dwarf planet classified objects that if they became considered planets, that we could add them to our solar system. So, let's see. I know there's Pluto Ceres. I think I'm pronouncing this one correctly. Maki Maki. Not 100% sure. I also barely know anything about it. There's also one called Eris, I believe. Perhaps I should look these up before I actually talk about them. But I think I'm going to have to get me some sleep. Also get out of this car before the rainstorm hits. That way I'm not soaked when I'm trying to go to sleep. So, I hope this ASMR test proves that there's some purpose in me attempting to do ASMR. because I would very much like to give back to the community that has allowed me to go to sleep for the last 5 years. Thanks for listening.